Okay, and Dorothy, as we're talking about the CNLC, what would be your title there? What were you, a member?
I was a staff liaison from the Lutheran Church in America.
Tell me your role in the LCA. What were you doing in the LCA prior to all this talk of merger?
Yeah, I was assistant to the bishop of the church. When I was first appointed, I was assistant to Dr. Marshall, who was then called president, and then Dr. Crumley as bishop. Prior to that, I was executive for the women's organization, Lutheran Church Women.
At what point did talk of a merger begin to sort of appear on the radar screen?
Yeah. Most immediately before CNLC was in the work of the Committee on Lutheran Unity, CLU, and even before that, the Joint Committee on ALC and LCA cooperation, joint cooperation, out of which grew the Committee on Lutheran Unity. And it was during the proceedings of we called it the CLU, that finally a vote was taken, opinion poll by the synods and districts of the churches as to whether or not the people wanted to pursue merger. And it was a substantial vote in favor of that.
What were some of the obstacles that stood in the way of talk of a merger? What were some of the concerns?
Yeah. I think first and foremost would be the stances of the two larger churches, ALC and LCA. Dr. Preuss, as president of the ALC, said repeatedly that there was theological unity in the churches, and organizational change, uniformity did not have to follow. We could cooperate, we could increase our cooperation, but we did not need to reorganize as one church. The LCA stance from the beginning of the LCA was to work for the unification of all Lutherans. And there was always the hope that we would together be one church someday.
Those were some of the challenges. What were some of the obvious, if you did the pros and cons for doing this, what were some of the pros?
Well,
what was the motivation for it?
Yeah. Part of this grew out of our self-understanding of the church as one church. That would be the LCA. Certainly, there was the view that cooperation can go so far, and coordination, but there comes a time when somebody can drop out. We can make together a much stronger witness in our society, and even before our government, if we were one church.
It must have been difficult for folk like you who worked so hard and so long to make this new Lutheran Church a reality. And then once it's a reality, there's all of a sudden a new national staff and a new institution, a new infrastructure, and suddenly all these folk that were so involved are now not involved. I mean, wasn't that kind of difficult?
Oh, it was tough on people. It was not so tough on me because I had made a choice not to become part of that new structure. But it certainly was true with a number of people. And it was true among, I think, some of our clerical members who felt that they had a call to the church, and this kind of organization and the policies that were established militated against that call.
Describe for me the CNLC. What was it? Give me a definition.
A definition? It defies a definition. It was a working group of 70 people. Now I say working group. It was, in the minds of some, supposed to be a legislative body, being so large. But the commission took upon itself its own life and wanted to make many decisions itself, and oftentimes divided itself into small groups to work and so on.
70 people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's no way to organize a party. Why 70?
There was a division of opinion about this. The ALC leadership wanted to have a larger group, believing that it would be more representative of the people. LCA was used to, historically, with joint commissions on unity, for example, which brought the LCA into being, of a much smaller group. I think it was 48 people, something like that. So there is part of this church history, church tradition that was behind it. Also the fact that a larger group would be very expensive in terms of meetings. And also that a smaller group could work together, could become a more cohesive group than a larger group of 70.
How did all that inclusiveness work to kind of make this a challenge?
Well, the use of the word quota was an ongoing debate within the commission. And even before the commission actually began to operate, the idea of this kind of representation from lay clergy, women, men, people of color from across the United States came from the Committee on Lutheran Unity. That's where the origin of it was in terms of making it a working principle in the CNLC.
So was it, did it cause tensions, or did it make things easier? Or?
It created tensions within the commission because there was scarcely a meeting that went on where quotas did not come up on the agenda in some way. It also created issues out in the constituency because Synod and districts at their conventions would send in communications to CNLC in opposition to it. Someone has said that the people who were in favor of this kind of representation called it a goal, and those who were opposed always spoke of it as a quota.
How did the headquarters wind up in Chicago? What's that story?
Oh my, what a story. Over 2 meetings. They were, to me, one of the most, that whole incident, to me, was one of the most interesting, frustrating experiences of the council. Because it's well known that Chicago was not the first choice. But when one of the many votes that was taken, Milwaukee came up as the top place, primarily because some people did not want Minneapolis to be number 1. And it was through a whole series of amendments and substitute amendments and all kinds of parliamentary work that finally got us to the point where Chicago was voted. Bo Sorensen, who was my co-worker from the ALC, and I, we attended every meeting of CNLC as staff people. We were the ones who did the legwork in counting the ballots, and we were back and forth any number of times counting these ballots for these various cities.
How about the name?
The name?
Yeah.
Well, the name came fairly easily. People in the constituency, when polls were used throughout the districts and synods at their conventions, many of them wanted Lutheran in the name, and a fair number wanted evangelical. And it was important to add "in America" so as not to confuse it with any predecessor body. Although there was a buzz about the fact that there was a much smaller church in the Iceland Synod that had the same name, and a lot of legal work was done to be sure that we were not infringing on certain rights of another body, even though it was very small and hardly operative. But some people felt that it was an important ethical decision for the CNLC to make. And when the vote came, I think it was Dr. Crumley, it was the one who voted against it because of the ethical problem. But as far as I know, there's never been any problem since.
Social dynamics mandates that in any group, especially a group of 70, that certain personalities will tend to rise to the fore as being significant. Who are some of those personalities?
Well, the leaders of the churches, the presidents or bishops as they were called in those days, were certainly important spokespeople. Also, people like Dr. Reuben Swanson, who was the secretary of the LCA, was often a person who was able to find a way through a myriad of problems when the commission was be able to pull in views and to set forth a motion that eventually would work. Dr. Marshall was a person who spoke rather sparingly, I would say, but always spoke with a great deal of clarity and very articulate and looked upon as an important spokespeople. Al Anderson spoke at times. He was one who worked a lot behind the scenes, he and Reuben. Our other theologians spoke from time to time, Dr. Moiser, Dr. Ferdy, Dr. Ruman, Dr. Lazarus. All of them had their say at particular times, especially on matters that related to theology. Among the women, Barbara Lundblad would speak from time to time, as well as Elizabeth Bettenhausen, who was quite outspoken on some things. They're some of the people who come immediately to mind, along with a person like Robert Brorby from the Lutheran Church in America representative, who one of the funny stories, I think, that came out of the CNLC meetings was when we were ready to adopt the 1,000 motion. The chair, Bill Kinnison, called upon Bob Brorby to give the motion, since Bob Brorby had made more motions than anybody else, was ruled out of order more than anybody else, and so he was asked to make the motion to adjourn the meeting. He also lost more motions than anybody. And he made his motion to adjourn, and the commission voted it down.
And I bet everyone had a good laugh.
And a great laugh afterwards, yeah.
Go forward to that day in Columbus, Ohio. It was all finally done. What was your perspective on that day?
At the Constituting Convention? Well, it was a great day in many ways. It also was a sense of relief that we had been able to come this far. There was some excitement in it with these representatives from the DMS group in Pittsburgh, Denominational Ministry Strategy, I think is the name. There was that whole element, but then there was the worship itself, which was so very meaningful. Yeah.
It's been 15 years. Two bishops in the ELCA recently ordained were ordained in the ELCA, not a predecessor.
Yeah. Huh.
there's been water under the bridge, as it
Yes,
were. Was it a good idea?
Sure. I think so. It was an idea that whose time was coming, and it was important to undertake it at that particular time. Probably be much more difficult today if it were to be done.
Seitz and I were talking in the car the other day. It would be interesting to do some math to add up the budgets from the three predecessor bodies and then amortize that over the 15 years and look at the numbers, baptized members, mission starts, and all those different quantitative things, and to decide if it, from a business standpoint, that was a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be debatable or not, but
I think it would be debatable because you can't take those statistics alone. They have to be put in some kind of a context, and heavens knows the context in the church and in the nation and the world has changed since 1987 or 88 when we started. Yeah.
What should they have done differently in hindsight? What would have made the whole process smoother?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought awfully much about that. I think in terms of startup for the new church, that we probably should have done some things somewhat differently in the processes related to the selection of staff. There may have been some slippage that way, which made it difficult for the new church to get going. I think we, in terms of CNLC, and also the transition team, which was very important, probably didn't maybe work diligently enough in getting a more accurate picture of the financial situation of the present churches at that time, the merging or uniting churches, didn't get an accurate enough picture of the finances and how, particularly the streams of revenue and how they worked.
Now, you had a role in the transition team?
Yes.
What was your role there?
I was the coordinator for it.
How did that come about?
As it became clear that the new church was going to come into being, somebody had to take these ideas for the new Lutheran Church and help to make them work in an actual organizational structure. And so the transition team's job was to take those recommendations that in all likelihood were going to be coming from the CNLC to the churches and to say, okay, how are we going to do this? How are our colleges and seminaries going to relate to the church? And the whole financial picture, of which I have spoken, bringing the synods into being. There were synodical transition teams, and the parent, in a sense, the big overarching transition team was the one that gave a lot of guidance to transition teams. Transition team met 15 times, and we sent out 15 mailings to transition teams, bringing them up to date on what was happening across the planning for the new church, but particularly those things which were important for the building up of the synods, organizing the synods.
Where did those meetings take place?
They took place primarily in a couple in New York, a couple in Minneapolis, a number of them in Chicago. Yeah. We met at, the Hilton right across this, many a meeting in there.
The Hilton right at O'Hare.
Yeah, yeah.
Did they have frequent flyer miles in those days? You must have racked up some miles.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, last thoughts. Just wrap it up for me. in summation, your impressions on the whole process, reflecting now these 15 years back, 15 to 20 to really 25 years even.
Well, I think I think favorably of the process and of the church, recognizing that there's still a lot of things that need to be done. We are still not, even though we are an Evangelical Lutheran Church, we still have a ways to go in evangelism itself, for one thing. We are learning to speak as a church on social issues. In terms of representation, the idea of an inclusive community is still very important, but we still have ways to go in order to increase our membership from groups who are African American or Hispanic, which is a very large growing group in the United States these days, as well as other groups as well. Also, we've seen growth, for example, in the leadership of women. We now have several women bishops, and that number seems to grow. I'm not quite sure what has happened to the number of women pastors, how increasing that number has become. So I would speak in favor. I would speak favorably about what has come to be, knowing that the future is open to us, and God is still leading us to some new ways of being faithful and active and committed right here where we are, each in the local place as well as nationally and worldwide.